you also mentioned very briefly that you've had an NDE. Would you care to tell us about
Sure,
that? What happened?
sure. I wrote about it in one of my books. I remember that. I was back in, boy, it was over, let's see, 15 years ago now. It was about 15 years ago. I was living in Laguna Beach at the time, California. Um, I was had food poisoning, and I'm not going to the gory details, but it was 12 hours. I was really sick to my stomach, and I would let go. And I was driving from LA to Laguna Beach because I was doing the show Ghost Whisperer up there. And I thought I got to get home to Laguna Beach. I got to get back to my home. And every exit, I go about 2 miles, and then I have to go off the side of the road and let go. My stomach had to be emptied, and then I felt fine. A couple more exits, same thing. Ended up, to make a long story short, that night my partner at the time, Brian, I asked him, "Come on, please, I'm not feeling well." And this is at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. He got back at 8 o'clock at night. So you imagine the whole day I was really going. And I to explain to him what happened. He goes, "Well, you seem fine." I said, "Yeah, but here it comes again." And I went to the restroom, and I let go, and I was kind of blacked out. My head hit the sink, and I blacked out on the floor, and I popped right out of my body. And I was out of my body, and that's the awareness. It's awareness. It's awareness being out of the body. And I was like, "Oh wow, this is great!" But I'm not supposed to go now. This is not my time. I was like, "What am I doing here?" And my friend, my cousin Patricia, she completed suicide many years before, and she was 49, and she taught me metaphysics as a child. And she never came to me since this experience. She never came back. But for this, I saw her very clearly, and I said, "Pat," I said, "is it?" Oh, she goes, "It's gonna be over. Don't worry, it's gonna be over." And I said, over, or over? I need to know, because that's my sense of humor, that personality. She goes, "You'll be fine." She left, and all of a sudden I became aware. There's no time. You have moments, instants, I guess. And I was suddenly aware that everybody has like a cord at the top of their head, and it bleeds into a tapestry, like a human tapestry or matrix. And I realized at that moment that every thought we had came out of the head, and it created a color, a shape, a structure, and it bleeds into that whole human tapestry. And your thought influences the entire tapestry. And then when you pass to the spirit world, you have a life review, and you look at that tapestry and you see how you influenced it. Is it looking beautiful with the good thoughts that you had, or did you mess it up by having fearful thoughts and negative thoughts? That was a really great insight. So I got that one, and then all of a sudden I saw my father who had passed, and it's like scenes of a movie, I guess the best way to describe it. And he was in a garden, didn't believe in life after death until he passed, and he said, "You got it right." And he was in a garden, and I went over, and he looked at me. He was 27 years old, and he handed me a white rose. And he said, "James, you can't be here. It's not your time yet. You got to go back." Okay. And all of a sudden, whoosh, I was back in my body, and my head hurt. I was like, "Oh." And Brian was looking down at me. He goes, "James, open your eyes. James, wake up." And I looked at him, and the first words out of my mouth were, "Dying is easy. Living is hard."
Yeah, it is. And I've interviewed so many people who've had NDEs. So, I mean, I've heard all these really remarkable stories. So, dying specifically, being dead isn't scary to me. It's the getting there, it's the being sick up until it actually occurs. Do you have any idea why we have to, I'm using quotation marks here, suffer so much? Not everybody, but so many of us suffer in the hours, days, weeks before we actually leave our bodies.
Yeah, so many different reasons, not just one reason. So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who helped with death and dying, she wrote the book about death and dying, 7 Stages of Grief. And when she had a stroke, and she was with her daughter, who was taking care of her, and she was in the hospital a lot, and she was on her knees praying to God. And she said, "Why did my mom have to suffer the stroke? My mom helped millions of people with her book and her work. Why?" And the words that came through from a guide said, "This is God's grace. Your mother could have several lifetimes, or get it over in just one time with this experience." So she chose this. So sometimes it has to do karmically, a learning about, this is interesting. Sometimes you have to be bedridden or suffering to teach those others in your group about unconditional love, or taking care of, or learning to receive love. Maybe that's their whole life. Now you have to balance it and receive it. It also has to do a lot with people's belief systems. My sister, who was mediumistic and just passed in April, and she was, and it was so interesting, Lisa, because I was here in my house in San Diego, and she was ill. She had cancer, and she was in the hospital, and she wasn't in a coma, But she would come to me here in my mind, and she said, "Oh, I'm getting help from Sister Rosalie." Sister Rosalie, who's that? I'm thinking, who is that? And I asked my other sister. She said, "Oh, that was her camp counselor when she was 8 years old." So I was getting all these messages before she was out of the body. And I was in this office, and all of a sudden, a group of spirit beings who I felt, didn't see, said, "You have to go back to New York right now, right now." They pushed me out of the room. Got to the hospital and talked to her, and she was not on pain medication. She was not receiving it. She said, "Oh, I can't. I'm afraid of it." I said, "No, you have to take pain medication. There's no reason to suffer. God in his wondrous ways has enlightened these scientists with these wonderful prescriptions and medicines to give to us, to help us. We don't need to suffer. Most of us don't need that." So once she was on the pain medication, she felt much better. And part of it was the ego, part of the belief system. And she said, "Oh, I feel so much better." I said, "Yeah." And she had all these experiences. She'd go in and out of consciousness, and she probably came about, I don't know, three different times. She goes, "Am I dead yet?" She goes, "Oh my God, I must have died 5 times already. Can I go already?" And she kept the sense even to the end because she had that awareness of life goes on. And when she came out of her body, I was back on the plane headed back to California, and she came to me very clearly, and she said, "Oh, I can't stand that world we just came from. I'd never want to go back there. Oh, James, that was awful. That place is awful." And every spirit I ever had come through has always mentioned I would never come back to that world, that earth world. It's really a hard place. Disease is not good. I don't miss that disease I had, the pain I had. No, thank you. So it's pretty interesting.
And yet we do continue to come back time after. Why?
Because I think, Lisa, number one, we just don't come back to this earth. There are many, many millions of galaxies and places and spaces, worlds within worlds to learn. And it depends on what you're learning, what the soul has to experience. The human experience is a very important one. It's the building blocks, if you will. And you have to understand certain aspects of the human in order to grow. Now, my sister I was just talking about, that must be behind me because she keeps on coming in. She said to me when she visited my house here, I had a beautiful garden, and I said, "Did you love the garden when you were here?" And she goes, "I wasn't able to see beauty in this lifetime," because she was so focused on something else, and she never kind of fit in with different things. And I just found out about a month ago. I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Oh, I'm taking courses now. There's courses over there." She's learning human behavior or human development, she said. Courses in human development. And she really prefers it. And she was met by my mother and father and her ex-husband. And then after like 4 days, they went on their own little worlds. So everybody's individualistic. If you choose to live together, you can. But they find over there that the individual soul goes to where they have to go and learn this or learn this craft or take time learning a creative thing or a scientific thing or a history thing. So we have the freedom to do any of that. It's and we get there, we realize, wow, there is no death. There's eternal, and that will help me. If I go back in what they call earth lives, 70 years, 80, and learn all these things, wow, that'll be amazing because I'll always end up here. So before we come back into the physical body as babies, right, we go through what's called a valley of forgetfulness. And that's the amnesia. So it erases everything and starts us off really with a kind of a clean slate because we want to start from the beginning. We don't want to go back having a memory of all our past lives. We might have hurt people or harmed people. If we knew that information, we would be so obsessed with getting that resolved that you wouldn't work on your courses for this time around. See, that's what it's about. So when you get to this, you realize, oh, time is nothing. Time is relevant. Time is only the physical world. There is no time outside the physical world. The past, present, and future are all one. And this is important too, Lisa. I think our behavior here on the earth, if we can learn to love every moment, live in the moment, that's we're living life. If we live in the past, we're not living life. Future is yet to be. All we have is this moment now. So make the most of that moment now. And it's what we have to understand is our thoughts and our behaviors are a rippling effect to other people, to other souls, to enlighten them. And sometimes you think you're not doing much for the world, but just by your thoughts, by prayer, by your loving intentions, you'll reach other beings. And that's why you do the work you do here. I do the work, we're doing light work to open up people up to the higher levels of awareness, I guess. Best way to say it.
Well, then you and I were both raised Catholic, so we speak the same language. What are your thoughts on hell? When my mom passed, my parents both went to Catholic school. They're very Catholic. My dad, when he had his last rites, he had 3 priests. He was so proud of the fact it took 3 priests And when he passed, he said he felt cleansed and as light as a little boy on his first communion. But my mom, when she was dying, she refused to talk to any priest. She was terrified to die because she never said this, but I believe it's because she was afraid of going to hell specifically. And as we've already discussed, you get what you expect. But because so many of us believe that there is a hell, does hell actually exist because we've created it, or did we tap into the existence of some? What are your thoughts?
It exists because we created it, because it's in our minds. You can have any atmosphere you want. You can have Jesus at your deathbed. You can have Buddha. You can have anything you want to create. You can have, and really, don't get me started on religion. But to me, religions imprison the mind. Okay, I think all religions have a bit of the truth, but not any one religion has all the truth. To me, the religion I live by is love. That's it. But the important thing, religion, you can get bits of piece of truth and gold in all of them. But when the human mind, the human being, starts controlling the masses through punishment, the whole born again Christian movement. I used to fight against Jerry Falwell, and I was a big organization I had with fighting with him, and the Christian right, who I don't understand why politics is now so filled with religious people, and religion and politics should not mix, as even in a constitution. Hello, but it's when it imprisons the mind, and since people don't want to take responsibility for their world, it's easier to follow than to lead, right? And people need to learn to lead, because again, there are gems of many religions, but people get caught up in the ego part of, giving money. Are you going to get hell? A lot of religions are based on fear. Catholic Church being the big one, as far as I'm concerned. And it doesn't make sense to me. It's so human. Jesus never wanted a religion. Jesus was just doing his thing. And the time that he was around was a political movement. It was all about politics. And it's just, if you take the essence of that mystic, there are so many wonderful things there. He was a medium. He was able to materialize things. That's a physical medium. He was able to heal. So he was an incredible medium. But it's important, like he said, if my father, I'm paraphrasing, father's more than me can do things. If you love the love of God, everybody create more than I can. And it's true, that the essence of God, that light that we all are, that Godhead. I thought that God is my higher self. We're all connected to that light, right? So I think God is a close thing to our higher self. I don't think God is an image of a man with a beard. You can have it if you want to, but that's a mind thing. That's a religious thing. I just think that a lot of religions, and Catholicism too, the Crusades, the religions are responsible for killing more people than anything else. So I look at it with a grain of salt, and you be a leader instead of a follower. Everybody has God within them. And that's what they do with that. Don't give up on God. You have God within you. There are many doorways to the light. And religion, like Catholic religion, it helped me. It set a good grounding foundation for my work now, creating a sacred space, having that sense of reverence, having that awareness of a higher being. That did help. It was when the man-made laws got in the way, and I was able to separate the both of them. I can't go to Vatican City. I've been many times to Rome, and for some reason, I can't go near it. It's like, oof. And I think it goes to a lot of the energy there. And they're the richest landowners in the world, but why can't they give it to the poor? So it's the ego thing. That's all.
Wow. Well, we are so close to being out of time. I could talk to you for days. You know that. I have one last question for you. This is the Beyond the Veil Summit. In your opinion, what is the veil? Is there a veil? And if so, what is it?
Well, I think the veil is our mind, right? So I think our mind creates a sense of limitation, and really we're not. We have to free our minds in order to be aware and open, and really just stepping out of the body is taking your last breath is moving out. We do it every night, like I told you earlier, and it's not the human beings like to create this drama about there's going to be a curtain lifted or a veil. It's how we can relate to the movement, I guess. We built up death so much, and people come back in the office and say, "Oh, it's nothing. It's natural. No one needs to fear death. You feel more alive than ever before." Oh, the earth life is so limiting, and you step out of the body, you just step out. It happens naturally. You've done it millions of times before, and it's an opening, it's expression, it's life. You feel life again. You feel this joy again.
Thanks for listening. Check out Castle Gate, a novel based on my own ancestral healing journey at lisabonis.com. In 1921, 4 men set off from Scotland to the United States. Will Garrock, his brother Pete, his son Willie, and his nephew Thomas, all coal miners. They left behind the miners' rows and the nationwide mining strike with its soup kitchens. Their destination was Castlegate, Utah, where they had kin to welcome them before sending for their wives and children. They prospered in America, working in one of the finest mines in Utah. Until that tragic day, March 8th, 1924. Disaster struck. 3 explosions, trapping 171 men inside. Rescue crews worked tirelessly for days, but sadly, they could not save a soul. Women were widowed and children were orphaned, and some never recovered from their broken hearts. Castlegate is the true and tragic saga of a Scottish family whose dreams of finding their fortunes in the bountiful coal mines of Castlegate, Utah during the Prohibition era explode in one of the most devastating mine disasters in American history. Learn more at lisabunnies.com.